Welcome to SomeGuy's Garage. Today, we're going to take a look at 7 different tools that are meant for turning nuts and bolts that you may not have seen before. We're going to start off with the Knipex Pliers wrench. If you're a subscriber to this channel, you've probably already seen these, so that's why we're starting here. But these are a pair of pliers that are essentially designed to work as an adjustable wrench effectively. So you're able to adjust the size with the push button here, and then you can grip onto any old nut and bolt really easily. If you haven't seen my review of these, you should check it out. But these really are a must-have. They're very, very convenient and take the place of a lot of different wrenches. So next up at number 2 is a pass-through ratchet. It looks a lot like a normal ratchet until you look down the middle. These are not normal socket drives. They actually let you pass a bolt right up the middle of them. When you separate these out, the sockets are actually hollow. And what that lets you do is on a bolt here, you can actually pass, and I'll tighten this right down, you can actually pass the bolt right through them. So they're infinitely deep, and the ratchet obviously fits on top like that. So you're able to turn a bolt with an infinite depth of the stud. The other nice advantage of these is how low profile they are. So compared to a normal ratchet, I'll grab one here. With a normal ratchet, you can see just how much more shallow these are. And this is a fairly shallow ratchet to begin with, being a gear wrench as well. So pass-through sockets and as a set is a really interesting tool, and that's why it makes the list at number 2 here. So next up at number 3 is what's known as a Crowsfoot wrench. So these are actually just like the open end of a normal wrench, but what you can do is put a ratchet on them like this. They aren't really used to actually ratchet around. You wouldn't do that. But what they do is give you an offset access to a nut and bolt. Where they really come in handy is when you add an extension. So you can put an extension on these, and now you have an offset access to a bolt that maybe is down in a hole or something like that that you can't otherwise get access to. They aren't a very common use things, but there are certain bolts that, especially on vehicles, you can't get to any other way. And so that's a Crowsfoot wrench. Next up at number 4 is Irwin's locking plier wrench. So this is just like your normal standard vice grip, but has a 3-sided gripping mechanism that latches onto bolts. So they actually fit very cleanly around the bolt and have the right orientation of the jaws to do that. And as you loosen down, you can tighten and then lock on. So the nice thing is these don't fall off, but you can also use these in place of, say, lines wrenches or flare nut wrenches, where you need to be able to actually get an open end, but want a really, really secure grip on the bolt. And of course, they release just like normal locking pliers. And they come in multiple sizes, so to grip different size nuts and bolts, there's actually a smaller set as well. But I find these really handy for brake lines, then that they grab and hold on tighter than any other wrench that I've ever used that has an open end. At number 5, we have what's known as a hand impact driver. So this is very similar to what an impact wrench would do, but these are driven manually. So what you actually end up doing is hitting the back with a hammer. So you hit that back with a hammer, and when this head pushes down, it twists. So you'll see there's that little bit of twist there as you push down, and that drives the bolts. So the big advantage to those, and obviously you put a socket on them. So the big advantage to these is that as you're driving, you're also hitting down, and that keeps the socket very well attached, and you can exert a lot of force here that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. The downside, obviously, is that it only turns maybe 1/10 of the turn on each push. You can see there, and that's actually how you do forward reverse with it. But it's very limited and slow. Where these are really useful is on brake rotors. So you can actually use them with a bit in a socket. And if you've ever seen those brake rotors that have the couple Phillips screws holding the rotor on, this is a great way to remove them without stripping the head. Because of that downward pressure, it prevents the cam out that you would otherwise normally get when using just a regular screwdriver. 6th and second to last here is actually a weird little attachment for an air hammer. So what you're able to do, and they're called shake and brakes, but you can put this bit into an air hammer, attach a socket to it. Actually, before we attach the socket, we grab a wrench and you put the wrench around here, and then you attach the socket to it. And so what you effectively have is an air hammer with a socket on it. And this might seem really silly, but it actually kind of gives some impact mechanism to the bolt, kind of some rattle to loosen it up, and then you turn it with the wrench. So very stubborn and rusty bolts, especially if you use like penetrating fluid or anything like that, you can actually surprisingly loosen them off this way. So kind of a hammering at the same time as turning sort of tool. You do the turning manually, but the air hammer provides the hammering action. Very different, very weird, very specialized, a tool that probably a lot of people have never seen before or tried out. And last but not least, number 7. This is a drill-based impact wrench adapter. Our friends at Torque Test channel will have just done a video on this. It's really cool to see what it can do, so go check that out. But what this effectively is a impact wrench that you can attach to a normal drill. So fits into a 1/2-inch shank drill, tighten that down here, and then provides an impacting mechanism. So makes your regular corded drill or cordless drill a actual impact wrench and gives you the ability to tighten and loosen things that you wouldn't otherwise expect a drill to be able to do. So we'll just give this one a bit of a shot in action here. And as you can see, it actually does hammer and impact like a normal impact wrench. So that's 7 strange ways of turning nuts and bolts. Not your typical wrench or socket. I mean, other than these are getting pretty close, but not your typical socket wrench for turning nuts and bolts. If you have any not so standard ways of turning nuts and bolts, let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested in hearing. Otherwise, if you aren't already subscribed, please consider it. And as always, thanks for watching.